Ladies and gentlemen, DB&A Television is proud to bring you a Roar Media production, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. If you do not know him, you better Google him. He was a high school Hall of Famer, school record holder, 10-time letter winner. He was just a boy with a ball and a young man with visions of greatness from the land of Hoosiers. When his playing days were over, he wanted to give back to the game that provided him purpose. He had found his passion on the hardwood. 14 years college coaching, multiple regional and conference championships, multiple national rank programs, coached the National Player of the Year. Winning followed him to 15 seasons professional coaching, multiple championships, multiple Coach of the Year honors, near 780 win percentage. He placed over 100 players to their respected national teams that represented their countries at the World Championships and Olympic Games. He has coached current and former NBA stars. His purpose is now to serve, empower, inspire. Here he is, host of the Coach Scott Field Show. Make some noise, show some love. Host Scott Field.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you're watching us from around the globe, I say thank you for allowing us into your homes, most importantly, into your hearts. If you're watching us on the DB&A Television Network, a sincere thank you for your support. Continue to support the network sponsors and the other outstanding talent here on the network. If you're listening to us on podcast form today, Peter and I say turn that knob up and let us put that flavor in your ear. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time once again to lace them up for another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. The man to my left needs no introduction. He is a 32-year journalist with award-winning, iconic Peter Vecsey. Peter, thank you for joining us on the show today. I appreciate your time and look forward to the conversation.
God, how can you say I was only 32 years? How can you
Still going.
have that? No. How can you have that wrong right at the beginning? I was like 50 years, Scott.
Starting at the age of 16?
I did.
That's
I did.
amazing. That's
Started
amazing.
I worked at the Daily News when I was a junior in high school, and but I mean, I covered the NBA for 40 years. You know,
Amazing.
NBA, and I've been retired since 2012. But
Wow.
every once in a while, and take a shot at things for a year or a few months, whatever. I just did 5 months, I think 4 months with the Retired Players Association, writing about those guys or whatever appealed to me actually, but only the retired players. Anyway,
Outstanding.
Get the decades right, Scott.
I love it. Let's get right into it, because I look at your there's so much that you've done in this industry and so many articles and columns, and it's just phenomenal. Looking back at it, your Armed Force Special Services, how much did that play a role into your journalistic style?
All right, again, I got to correct you. So it's Special Forces. It's not Special Services. I was a Green Beret.
Wow.
And proud of it.
Yeah.
When I went through airborne school, first of all, I had a lot of trouble in school my whole life. Was not really into the work and stuff like that. I was really more into the physical stuff. And so when I got drafted and volunteered to go airborne, when I got those silver wings put on my chest, as Barry Sadler used to sing in his song, that was the proudest moment of my life.
Wow.
And then I went from there to become a Green Beret. And so I made the most out of my 2-year being drafted 2 years, although, you know, it's 2 of the best years of my life, obviously. From 22 to 24, I was working at the Daily News as a statistician in sports department at the time when I was drafted. So they have to keep your job for you to come back to, and they did, of course. And then I went on from there. When I came out of the Army, I decided that I better start paying attention to what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I started writing by myself on my time. And my father was a journalist. He worked at the Daily News also, as well as he did Associated Press. He had two full-time jobs, but he was the only one who would really help me. You know, he was an editor, he was a writer, whatever. So he would help me. But you know, I tell everybody, you know, like, nobody helped me, you know, get to where I got early on, and nobody helped me when I started NBC or TV for real. I was telling, I'm not going to say his name, but there's a guy on TV right now that I follow, and I like him, and I called him the other day to give him some advice and stuff, and I said, and he was really appreciative of it, you know, and so I said to him, I said, you know, when I was at NBC, I said they told me one thing, they gave me one piece of advice. They said, relax. I said, oh, great, thank you. I wouldn't have known that one. Thank you for that. You know, oh, okay, fine. But anyway, I think I did help him, and I love helping the guys that I follow, and you know, I saw Mark Stein today. He put something up on Twitter that Ron Harper had said something about me, and Mark Stein followed it. So I've known Mark Stein since he began in the business out in LA. And so we've maintained a relationship all these years, which is, you know, very important to me.
Yeah, see, I think that's neat. You know, and again, your journalistic style, some people would call it abrasive. I saw it just as direct and honest. And if I was ever blessed enough to have a guy write a book about me, I'd want it to be you, because I know you would ask the direct questions to get the content that you needed to make it compelling for the viewers and to the readers. And that's what I like.
Well, that's if the person who hired me to do the book wanted the truth out there. I don't know about that. It's like Michael Jordan did his documentary. They didn't ask me to participate in it, and I had and I covered him since you know, since his rookie year, and had many different, you know, experiences with him. But he didn't want any of that in there. They didn't ask me to do it. But the truth of the matter is, I told his producer recently that, because I talked to her about it, and she said, well, we just didn't have, you know, we were time restraints. And all. I said, please, you know, I don't want to hear that. I said, but the truth is, I wouldn't have done it anyway, because I wouldn't have given away my stuff to them, not knowing how much they would use or how they would slant it, you know, take things out of context, whatever, or not use any of it. So I'll save that for a book that I may or may not ever finish, but I wasn't going to give it to them. So I really wasn't upset. I just thought they were stupid not to get me on there, because I've got some unbelievable stories involved with him and his father, you know, and his ex-wife, and you know, many different facets. When he played baseball, I went down when I was with the New York Post. When he played baseball, when he retired to play baseball, I said to my editor, why don't you give me a chance to go down to, you know, someplace that he's playing ball and try to do an interview with him. He hadn't done any. And my editor had faith in me. But even if I wasn't able to do it, he knew I was going to take the best shot at it. So I went down to Orlando and I watched Michael play that day. I watched him stand out in the field and hardly move the whole time. And I thought the whole time was, what a waste of talent. This guy, I'm one of the most athletic people on earth, and he's standing in right field, you know, playing with himself. And I went to the hotel where I knew they were staying, and I waited, and he got off the bus, and he said, well, what are you doing here? I said, well, Jesus, I wonder what I'm doing here. I'm here to try to interview you. He said, all right, come on inside. And he gave me several hours, first in the bar and then up in his room, of really some unbelievable content, straight from his gut. And it was probably one of the best columns I ever wrote. And because all I did was quote him, basically. And I think I did two pieces. And I tell people, like, before I left the room, Rod Higgins, who became his general manager with the Charlotte team, he was the only one in the room. And before I left, I said, you've told me all these things, very controversial things. And I said, it's one thing to say them in private. I said, but think about what it's going to look like in the newspaper. So I gave him an out. And he said, I don't care. Fine, go with it. And I went back to New York, and I was in the middle of the column, and I got a call from his agent, David Falk, asking me if I would not write the column. And I said, no, that ain't gonna happen. I said, my editors are waiting for this. This is huge. I've already committed to it. I said, I gave him an out, he didn't take it. So after that, Michael showed the kind of guy he is many times, and what a liar he is. He went and told people in Chicago that everything I wrote was not true. He never said. Wow. But everybody who was in the know, I remember Sam Smith, who wrote the Jordan Rules, sent me a note, which I still have, and said, Pete, we know who's telling the truth here. We know he did it. So, stuff like that, Michael being Michael, and I helped him out in many, not protected him. I went to bat for him in many different times when I was on TV or in the newspaper, but I also went after him certain times. But it just showed what kind of guy he is. I mean, he just, in many ways, can't be trusted. And that was a perfect example.
When you watched The Last Dance, or how much of that did you watch? Did you know that there was so much more, or many more layers to that story or documentary that didn't get out there? And maybe that's why Scottie Pippen is now coming out with a book in the near future?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I watched it all. I watched every minute. And what I got out of it was that people got to see the Michael Jordan that the writers, who were close to him or had his confidence, which I did. Obviously, he gave me that interview. But yeah, there was stuff that he left out. I knew for a fact, and I understand why Scottie Pippen is doing what he's doing. At the same time, I can't wait to read Scottie Pippen's, because I was around Scottie an awful lot early on when he and Michael were at odds, basically, and same with Horace Grant. Those two guys hung together. And I did a lot of features on the Bulls, obviously. And so I was around those two guys a lot. They were knocking him left and right, and he was knocking them left and right. And part of the story when I went to Orlando was he was knocking Pippen and Grant. He knocked them both. And so I knew there was a lot more. But let's take the other side. It bothered me that Scottie Pippen was always clamoring for a new contract. He was always upset that he wasn't making the kind of money that he should have, and he absolutely should have. But when Reinsdorf said it, I think he definitely said it in the documentary that he told him this wasn't a good contract you're signing, but Scottie needed the money to pay off child support for several, maybe more than several children that he had. With different women. So that's why he did it. He did it for the insurance, the guarantees. And then, when it became so conspicuous that he was underpaid, he pitched a bitch. And unlike Michael, to give him credit, and Michael has said it himself, he gave himself a pat on the back. He didn't do that. And he signed the same kind of contract, but he lived by it. He knew he signed it. And then when it came time, and it was finally time to become a free agent at last, they had to pay him. I think it was 30 and 33 million in 2 consecutive years. He did a 1-year contract for 30 or 33, whatever it was, and then the same thing the next year. In those days, that was unbelievable money. Today, fringe all-stars make that kind of money, which is a joke. But anyway, so Scottie was wrong for the way he handled it. But I'm interested to see his take on, the way Michael takes credit for everything. Scottie's absolutely right that Michael didn't become Jordan. He didn't become Air Jordan until Scotty came around and they won championships together. Jordan never won a championship without Scotty and vice versa. But I'll say the same thing. The Magic never won a championship without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So
Yeah.
you've got to have the guy, and Oscar Robinson didn't win a championship until he joined Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Milwaukee. Yeah.
There you go. Those are all facts right there, and I love that. If Michael Jordan played in a social media era, how much different would that have persona been perceived because of all the devices that are out there for recordings and
Yeah, I don't know how I would have survived either, truthfully. Yeah, he would have been biting his tongue almost right from the beginning because, absolutely we could be trusted, a certain group of us could be trusted going into the trainer's room when he was getting his ankles taped before a game and speaking to him one-on-one and he would say stuff that was like, it was great stuff to hear because it was so honest, brutally honest. But he totally expected us not to repeat it. And that was understood, and that's fine. He wasn't buying our silence. He was just giving us insight into what was going on. That could never happen today, I don't think. I remember when this is interesting. First of all, I have a couple great photos with me in the locker room with Michael one-on-one that I never knew existed. And then, somehow it gets back to me. Somebody sends it to me, a photographer who was taking it, whatever. And so I'm really happy about that. But kind of like the one with Julius Erving that you put up, you saw it on today, right? When you look,
yeah.
that occurred in the locker room in the 1978 All-Star game in Atlanta. And somebody took the picture. I didn't take that. And they sent it to me. It's like, holy crap, unbelievable.
Wow.
So I in that same vein, I coached one game. It's called the Elite 24. All the high school kids. ESPN put it on. It was at Rucker where I spent many years of my life coaching and playing up there. And they asked me to coach this team, and on my team was Kyrie Irving, and he was going into his senior year. And he asked me for some advice. And first of all, he asked me where you should go to school. And should I go to, I can't remember the third school, but should I go to Rutgers? He's playing high school ball in New Jersey. Should I go to Rutgers? Should I go to this other school? Or should I go to Duke? I said, geez, Kyrie, that's a tough one. Duke.
Yeah. Well,
but more than that, the advice I gave him was, and I gave it to a lot of the players. We conducted a little seminar, the players and the couple coaches and an interviewer. And I said to the kids, they were kids. Doc Rivers' son was on there. He was on the team. He was going into his junior year. And in fact, there were 5 or 6 pros and ultimate pros on that team. And I said to them at this little seminar we had, I said, look, the best advice I can give you is never trust anyone in the media until you know you can trust them. I said, if you start out by giving them your inside thoughts, you're going to get burned. And I said, and even you got to be so sure of the person that you're confiding in that you can trust them, even to the point where there are so many writers who will not print what was said to them, but they'll give it to somebody else.
wow.
So you got to figure that out, and so I think he might have taken my advice to extremes.
Oh, now, yeah. But it's interesting, Pete, because you look at so many stories, because you were asking questions because you knew and understood the game. I mean, you played at Archbishop Malloy, you're out on Rucker Park, and you built those relationships so you could come in with the angle of knowing the game and then getting the best out of that personality. And that's a skill set, because so many people now just write stuff with no validity just for clicks, and that drives me crazy.
Well, I gotta correct you on that. So I don't believe that I had got any relationships because of what I knew about the game. Now, I absolutely it absolutely helped me to be part of the Rucker. I started when Julius Erving came out of UMass after his junior year. I had covered him a little bit, asked him to play on my team through somebody called Dave Brownbill, who played at Hofstra, by the way, who was Julius Erving's best man at his wedding. He kind of got him to come. Starting with that, and then making friends up there, and showing that I would come to Harlem every weekend for 6 years, got me over. That's what got me over. Not the fact that I knew the game, but I had a relationship with Tiny Archibald, who at one point early in his career refused to speak to anybody in the media but me.
Wow.
That kind of stuff. And so that was passed down from those guys to the next generation. Hey, I remember when I first met Michael Jordan, and it was that I believe it was his first game at the Garden as a rookie exhibition. I think the conversation happened then, but it could have happened later. And I introduced myself, and he said to me, "I know who you are. You're Doc's boy." Exactly.
Wow.
That's what got me over.
Wow.
That they took that trust that Julius Erving had in me, or Tiny Archibald had in me, and those relationships continue to this day. And all the ABA guys that I covered that passed down that, Vecsey can be trusted. He's one of us, the whole thing. Maybe even to not maybe, but even to a fault, I was one of them, because I was hanging with them after hours.
Yeah.
And
See,
when I write my book, I'll probably talk about that. I'll probably write about that.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. And hopefully you're able to dive into that, and just, I think it's going to be a wonderful thing, because you've got to have millions of stories. And, speaking of stories, Peter, how many times, and I'm sure it's thousands, where you or one of your colleagues had a great story, and for either financial reasons or political reasons, the story was squashed. How often does that happen? Like, even like getting into the NBA that it is today, how many stories like that where you just had something wonderful and they're like, nope, put the brakes on it?
Never.
Wow.
Never.
That's amazing.
Oh, it didn't happen. It didn't happen writing, for the New York Post or for USA Today. Or, all right, I'm gonna clarify that. It happened once with USA Today, who I worked for 3 years. Didn't happen on NBC. People think, I told somebody recently, they thought David Stern put the clamps on us, would call the studio and say, never with me. He was fine with it. The story with you today is that I broke the story when Drazen Petrovic died in the car crash on the Autobahn. I broke that story on the front page of USA Today. How did I do that? Well, his agent called me and told me. And so we went with that. And okay, so now it's a little bit later. This is in June. A little bit later, the NBA finals are about to begin. And it coincided with Drazen being buried in Croatia. And
Wow.
I did a column on Drazen. I was tight with him. I'm not saying I was very tight. I was tight with him. I've said this many times. I was there. I happened to be in the locker room in Portland when he was traded to the Nets. How did that happen? Because my editors let me do what I wanted to. Only when we got a new editor who's still there now, a guy named Chris Shaw, was I not allowed to do that kind of stuff? And that's really why I retired. I couldn't take that anymore. But so I write the column on Drazen, and I send it in. And the editor, we each had our own editor at USA Today. You didn't deal with the sports editor, you had your own editor. And my own editor said, no, we can't go with this. You got to give me the finals were going to begin the next day. You got to give me an NBA finals story. I said, not happening. I said, if you don't have to print it, but I don't have to write another one. There's no way I'm writing another one. How could we break the story on his death and not write about him being buried? And it was like, you know how big that was. Wow. You know, it was unbelievably big how big his funeral was, and you know, a few Nets went over there. For Willis Reed went over there, and believe it or not, Chris Morris went over there, and Dudley went. A few guys that swear they loved him, you know, oh yeah, we love Drazen, didn't show up. Guys, they didn't show up, but whatever. So I said right then and there to myself and to my people around me, I said, after this finals is over, I'm quitting. I'm out of here. I had a 5-year contract. This was the end of my third. And when the finals was over, I went to the editor of the newspaper, Peter Price, I believe, yeah. And I asked to be allowed out of my contract. He asked me why, and I told him why. My sports editor was, you know, in that meeting. He said, well, why didn't you call me and ask me about it? I said, because you gave me an editor, and it was his decision. I wasn't going to go over his head. If you put that idiot in charge of this, and this was his decision, you know, I don't want to deal with anybody like that anymore. Probably one of my problems in my life. I just basically quit a job last week for the same reason. Don't get me involved. You know, if you're going to put me with people who can make command decisions, don't tell me later on that, oh, should have come to me. Nah, that ain't happening. So he let me out. He let me out of my contract. And I know it cost me $50,000 in stock. If I stayed another 2 years, I would have gotten $50,000. But so then the Post was now repurchased by Rupert Murdoch. He had to sell it because of Ted Kennedy not allowing passing legislation that prohibited people from owning a newspaper and a TV station in the same market, well, which is ludicrous. And finally, that was overturned. Rupert bought the paper back, and I went back to the Post, and I spent from I think that was like 1993 or so, or whatever, and I worked till 2012 with the Post.
Wow. See, great stuff. Again, you've got to have so many stories and so many memories. And as you did your writings, do you ever look back at any of the things that you've written and had any regrets about anything that you ever wrote? Like maybe it became too personal, or you think, oh man, why did I take that step?
Yes, I did. There were absolutely 2 columns that I wish I hadn't written. And then there was one-liner that I wish I hadn't written. And I'll tell you that one first. So, you know, Allen Iverson and I had a really good relationship. And his mother had a great relationship with my ex-wife and my son. He would let them in the locker. They would go to his locker, you know, before or after a game, and you know, just be around him. And his mother was like as young as my wife. You know, it's like, what the heck? So when he got into a problem with his wife, and I'm sure you remember. Well, maybe you don't. He threw her out of the house naked, and you know, huge story in Philly. And I wrote a one-liner about it. And I can't tell you to this day what it was. I don't remember, but it didn't matter. So the next year, Philadelphia is playing in Memphis, and I'm in Memphis because Hubie Brown was just given the coaching job, and I came down there for a week to cover him. And I go in the locker room before the game, the Philly locker room before the game, to say hello to Allen, and he cursed me out. And he was livid. He was so livid that Eric Snow and the other guys on the team who I really was close to, they kind of left. They're like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. So when he calmed down, he said to me, he said, did I always give your wife respect and your son respect? I said, absolutely. He said, so how could you disrespect me with that one line? He said, do you think that one line was really worth our relationship? It was unbelievable insight by him because it was personal. And I never forgot it. I never made that same mistake again. He really taught me something, and we were good after that. We were good. And the two columns I wish I hadn't written. One was on Marvin Webster's wife. Marvin played for the Knicks. I knew Marvin in Denver with the ABA. I knew him in Seattle with the Sonics, where they finished runner-up to Washington in '78. And then the Knicks signed him as a free agent. Came to New York, and he was terrible. He was terrible. And maybe why? Because of how he was being played. I'm not really. I can't really remember. But anyway, I was on him. We had a great relationship, but I was on him. And so I walked in a restaurant, Charlie O's, right downstairs from the Garden. And I walk in, and his wife, Madeira, starts yelling at me in public in the restaurant. I said, okay. And I wrote a column about it. Bad move. Taking on a wife, bad move. Terrible. I felt terrible about it. Here we were pretty close. She's hot at me. I get it. I should have just taken it, and I didn't. So that was a bad one. And the other one, what was the other one? The other one had to do with Cotton Fitzsimmons. Cotton and I were very, 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 very close. When I went out to Phoenix, I would stay at his house. And he had a little cabana in the back, and his mother-in-law would come breakfast, and we'd go out to eat at night, and the whole thing. I mean, his wife Joanne. It was like I was family. But it was at one point he was coaching Tom Chambers and saying negative things about Tom all the time, and I got tired of it, and I printed it. A huge mistake. Huge. So we didn't talk for years after that. And then we got back together, thank God, before he died. And I went out there when he was very, very sick a couple times and stayed out there until he died. So at least I got over that one. As far as the Webster one goes, Madeira and I never spoke again. Marvin, she ended up divorcing him, dying young. Marvin had mental problems. He died young. They had a son who died young. It was that family just fell apart big time. But I really liked Marvin. I wish I could have apologized to him.
Wow, that's heartfelt right there. You and I had a brief conversation a couple of weeks ago when we first got in contact about doing you being a guest. And it was right when Mark Eaton had passed away. And you had mentioned that, out here for the finals, you did Malone and Stockton, and you never had a chance to interview Mark Eaton. Who are some other guys that you wish you could have maybe interviewed that you didn't?
Well, let's dwell on Mark for a second.
Yeah.
I had a chance. I had a chance to interview him. I could have. I didn't. It never dawned on me that, hey, this would be a great story. Let's see what he's got. I spoke to him, but we never got into any deep conversations. I know he invited me over to his restaurant, and we, it was basically just, peripheral conversation. I did go out there for NBC and interviewed the center who took over for him, Greg Ostertag. I did a 2-part series on him for NBC. So somebody had the foresight to send me out there to do Ostertag, and he was really good. But I should have done Mark. I really liked him. I know what, Kevin Johnson once said to me when he was playing for the Suns, he said, you're always coming and you're talking to the stars of the team. He said, why don't you go down the bench and interview the guys on the bench who are watching the game, veterans who really know what's going on out there. It was such great advice. Advice I rarely followed, because my job was to be in the moment, and to be on top of breaking news or break news. And but I really should have taken the time to do those kind of guys. Mark Eaton. I mentioned to you the other day that this Kwame Brown is just, he really says stuff that I believe is true. And I never spoke to him once, I don't believe. I wrote about him. I certainly wrote about him. And I wrote about at the time, my friend has sent me columns that I wrote at the time about how Jordan and Doug Collins especially, were submarining him. Yeah, let's draft the guy #1 for our franchise, and then let's submarine him, undermine him, embarrass him, dehumanize him, emasculate him. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that's Michael, and that's Doug for sure. He did it wherever he went. So to hear Kwame, to hear what he's got to say, I just really wish that I had taken the time to find out who he was, because a friend of mine who was around Kwame a lot told me recently that he always knew how smart he was. He paid attention to what this guy said, advice to what this guy said. He asked questions. He was respectful. And I said, well, I wish you told me at the time. I would have taken that. Would have tried to get him. I'm trying to get on his podcast or whatever you call it. I'm trying to get on. I would love to talk to him. Even more, I'd love for him to invite me down to Georgia and give me a tractor, and we could do an interview from respective tractors. One of my favorite things in life is being on my tractor.
Wow.
So you could relate. But I love 99% of what he says. He could absolutely, not use the N-word, and that, I think that would be better. But that, he's very smart, and he, when he starts repeating things that his teachers told him, and that his mother and his grandmother told him, I said, whoa, boy, this guy, he's got a lot of content. So there are a lot of guys like that. I wish I had gotten closer to, but time was of the essence, and I was on deadline, and I was always looking for that next story to break.
Yeah. Talking about tractors, I think about the 2 years that I was able to observe and consult out here with the Utah Jazz and Coach Jerry Sloan, and that man had a collection of John Deere tractors like crazy. Did you get to spend time talking with Coach Sloan, about his McLeansboro, Illinois upbringing and things?
I did. Yeah, we were pretty good. Jerry and I were pretty good, and so he had his tractors long before I did.
Yeah.
But by the time I got my John Deere Z-Track, the largest one, we were no longer, talking about stuff like that. But Jerry and I had a really good relationship. We actually, went into the Hall of Fame the same year. The same year Michael Jordan went in, and David Robinson in Stockton. So that was big. But Jerry and I tell everybody, we have certain things I remember. The league back in the day would have meetings in the summertime, and everybody would come. And the league was not like it is today. It was way smaller. So every department would have meetings out there. Your marketing, your advertising, your publicity, whatever. And writers would come, and we'd get to be really close with everybody. And players didn't come, but the coaches and stuff. So I remember this one. It was in California, desert something, Palm Springs, and so it was late at night, and everybody was going to sleep, and there on the lawn is sitting, Jerry Sloan, Jake O'Donnell, the referee, and Vecsey, and we're drinking beer. It does not get any better than that. And I swear, I mean, obviously, I could not stay with him. And I remember just putting my head back and waking up hours later on the lawn.
Wow. Good stuff right there. Good stuff. And
He played for Evansville. Again, I
the
told you I went.
Aces.
And Hofstra had really good teams back then. Almost played Evansville in the small college tournament. So I knew who he was, from the beginning. And I got to be really tight with a lot of his teammates with the Bulls. Norm Van Leer and I used to hang out together, which was not good. And Love played for me in the Rucker, and Chet Walker and I were tight. I'm still in touch with Clifford Ray. I stay in touch with a lot of people, and a lot of those guys are very important, very meaningful.
Did you have more fun as a columnist covering ABA or the NBA?
Well, I wasn't a columnist covering the ABA. I was
Okay.
a beat writer, and I'm trying to work on this book. I actually was working on a chapter last night about how what the things that could happen being as tight as we were in the ABA, and stuff that today would get us all fired and in one institution or another. The ABA was very dear to me, still is. I bleed red, white, and blue. And why? Because we all hung out together. Everybody hung out. And, anybody who was in the league talks about that same camaraderie, the connection, the affection for each other. And we're talking about, when I say who was there, after games, it was, referees, cheerleaders, players, coaches, writers, everybody. And everybody who hung out, in those days, so the game would end, and so you go to an after party, or some guys would go play cards, but and then you had to catch the first plane out in the morning. But you're playing in small towns, like Squires had a regional team. You might have been playing in Richmond or Norfolk or Hampton Roads, and you had to catch a plane out to make sure you could make the next game the next day, and you would be fine. The team would be fined. I don't know if they paid it, but they would be fined.
Yeah.
If they didn't catch the plane out. So many times there was no sleep. I learned early on from Fritz Masman, who was the trainer of the Nets, go to sleep with your clothes on.
Oh boy. Did you
fight?
Did you have a favorite venue or place with the ABA that was just a great atmosphere for basketball at that time?
Man, all of them were, so quirky and so different. Some wouldn't have any fans. Some would have fans that wanted to fight you. Some fans would fight you. Some, I loved the Pacers. I love the Pacers, being around them. They were, very good. I became so close with Mel Daniels up until and numerous. Nedelicki and I still talk. I wound up falling in love with a cheerleader there and running away with her in the early 70s. And so yeah, I had some fun. Yeah.
See, I grew up in Indiana. I played my high school basketball there and was blessed to have a great career in Indiana. And Mel Daniels was great. I enjoyed my time with him at the NBA Summer League. And man, when he'd shake your hand, that big hand would just grasp you, and he was so strong. And matter of fact, you have a story where he asked you to induct him into the Hall of Fame, and Colangelo said no, right?
Right. It wasn't induct him in. I was on a committee an ABA committee that Colangelo had put together, and there were 7 of us, and so we voted just on the ABA guys that should go in. And I remember asking Mel, you deserve to be in. Do you want to go in? He said, no, I don't. I do not want to go in. And we talked about it for a while, and he finally agreed. He was the second guy we put in. We put in Artis Gilmore first, and then we put in Mel, and then Roger, and then Slick Leonard.
Bobby
So
Slick, yeah.
so Mel had a heart problem, which he ended up dying from, and he wound up not being able to go to the ceremony, but he wanted me to present him. And Colangelo said, no, you're not in the Hall of Fame. I said, well, I thought I was in the Hall of Fame. He goes, no, you're in the media Hall of Fame. I said, really? Really? I said, so I can't be a presenter to somebody like Mel Daniels. I've never gone back there. I've never gone back. Unfortunately, some people, a lot of people still want to be in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not one of them. But they're asking me to, write a letter for them. And, I try to tell them, I said, I'd be glad to write letters for people I think should be in, but they're not going to go by what I say. So it's probably going to indict you instead of, instead of induction, you're going to be indicted. But yeah, so it just the Hall of Fame is a money making thing. That's all it is. You have the a new categories now that they just made up. They just created, which are bogus categories to get guys like Jim Gray into the Hall of Fame where he doesn't belong at all. He doesn't even qualify for the award that they made up. He doesn't even qualify for that. But money's changed hands. I would almost bet I'm alleging that's how he got in. That's how they came up with this, and I'm alleging. So I don't think and they did that for the TNT crew too. Boy, oh boy, do they not belong in the Hall of Fame. But Peanut Gallery. That's what they are. They belong in the Peanut Gallery.
So like you're talking like Ernie Johnson and Shaq and Charles and Kenny.
Him all by himself. There's no question. No, but the crew that gets awards year after year is like it's such a vacant, hollow award because stuff they do. It's like it's watching cartoons. I can't watch it. No substance. They'll never be accused. I tell that about Barkley. He'll never be accused of abusing substance.
Yeah, you guys have a long going riff.
Yeah. Well warranted too.
Oh my goodness. Well, Pete, looking at your illustrious career, what would Peter Vecsey of today tell a 20-year-old Peter Vecsey?
Well, like I said, I'm in touch with a few people who do the league. They do reach out to me, and I'm I want to be helpful to them. So basically, what I tell them is that do your homework. Don't. It really bothers me, like the New York Post, for instance, I underline, would allow somebody to cover a team. Doesn't have to be basketball, but cover a team. You're just starting out covering a team, and all of a sudden, the second week, you have sources that they're using. How can that be? That's ridiculous. Well, it applies to the play, to the writers too. They need to take time to learn who they can trust, because I'll tell you, I was led astray several times, big time, And so I learned my lesson. I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I'm going to save that for my book, but I got sued in the Daily News because I was led astray by one of the ABA commissioners who gave me information. And he just wanted to get even with the person that he gave me the information about. And I paid the price. I listened, I figured the ABA committee, no, I should have gone to the person that he was saying it about. I was actually had a good relationship with the person. And so the Daily News got sued. I got sued, and it was settled. Fortunately, all they wanted was a retraction, and we retracted it. But boy, did I learn a lesson there. So these guys, they have to learn. You can't think that just because somebody has a position of power that they're going to tell you the truth. Not so. They're a lot of people have vendettas, and they're going to come through you for them. And so it takes a while, and it takes an editor to say, hey, not yet. Can't give me sources on this. USA Today wouldn't allow you to do that. And I knew that going in. You could not say sources told me this, told me that. So I figured out how to deal with that. I didn't have to deal. I said, no, I don't need sources. This is what's happening. This is what's happening.
There you go. Yeah. Let me ask you, I know you love actors and acting. Between Clint Eastwood and Denzel Washington, who would you put one, and then who would you put two? Because I know you love both of them.
Yeah, I do. No, it's a tie.
Is it because the parts they play, or just how they really get into character, stay into character?
What can I say? I mean, I'm such a Clint Eastwood fan, and I've become such a Denzel fan. I wish I could meet Clint Eastwood. I have met Denzel, and I've gone out to eat with him, and he really has given me some unbelievable compliments. I'll tell you a story. I was in Atlanta for TNT, staying at a nice hotel. I get on an elevator. It's like sixth floor, whatever. Coming down, there's one guy in the elevator. The guy says, "Hey," he said, "I really like your stuff." I said, "Oh man, thanks a lot." I said, "What do you do?" And he had a baseball hat on. He says, "I'm Denzel Washington." I said, "Oh shit." oh, okay, all right. So we became friends after that, and I remember when he did the movie. What's the great movie where he played the cop? It was
Training Day.
One of the greatest movies ever. Wow. Oh my. So I watched that movie, and I was like so taken back with the way Denzel acted in that. I mean, it wasn't acting after a while. I was like, holy shit. So he was sitting courtside during I think it was during a playoff game in LA at Staples, and I walked by him, and I didn't even want to say hello. I was like, damn, no, I didn't even talk to him. But then we went out to eat. I went out. I'm going to drop some names on you. So we went out. Jerry West and I went out to eat at one of his favorite restaurants, and Denzel was there and was sitting right across the table from each other. And I told him about being afraid to say hello to him. And he says, "As well you should have."
Oh, that's great. Oh, good stuff. Did you ever get to do like an in-depth interview with the logo, Jerry West?
I just did a podcast with him.
Oh, nice.
Our 2-hour podcast that was for the NBA Retired Players Association. I did 3 podcasts, but I believe I'm done. But I did Julius first, and I did Oscar second.
Wow.
They second names, and then the logo third. He gave me 2 hours, and he was very controversial. He answered every question I asked, unlike me, who was holding back from you. Oh, not really. Oh, so so yeah, he's had some rough things to say about Jeannie Buss and Kobe Bryant's agent, and Kobe Bryant really, and Phil Jackson, and oh my goodness, good stuff. Yeah.
Sounds juicy. Sounds juicy, and I'm sure that stuff may come out in your book as well, right?
No, I don't think so. No, it was there on the podcast. I don't think I'll repeat. I try not to repeat. You know, I don't. Some things you have to, but a lot of stuff I'm telling you here, saying for the first time. So
Wow, grateful for that, Peter. I appreciate it. This has
nobody
been.
watched.
Say it again.
I'm hoping nobody watches you, so I can use them in my.
Well, I think we're going to get a few views on us here to hear your content and stories. It's been amazing. Peter, thank you so much for your time. I'm forever grateful, and I've been a fan of yours from afar, you know, just watching your work and seeing columns.
You don't even have to. Did you hear that?
It froze up, Peter. I'm sorry.
And you don't even have to flatter me anymore. You got everything you want.
No, I'm just speaking from the chest, man. You gave me some great advice in our first conversation, and I'm going to hold on to that because I'm just a coach coming into this new space and enjoying the platform. So I'm grateful for you and grateful for the advice, and would love to stay in touch. And you get out here to Salt Lake City, let's connect.
I'm happy with the content you brought to the table. I love Utah, by the way. I went a year ago or 18 months ago. I went and worked in Best Friends, you know, up in Kanab.
Yeah,
You know,
down south.
volunteered there, and I spent some of the best time of my life working there. It was unbelievable. I would love to go back. I love that part of the country. Oh my God, breathtaking.
It is. There's just so much to see out here. And next time you come out, let's connect, and I'll show you some beautiful parts, and we'll do some good dinners and have some fun.
Bring you up to Best Friends and put you to work.
Hey, let's do it. It sounds like a great time to me.
Okay, Scott. Thanks a lot.
All right, appreciate you, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Peter Vecsey. Just a phenomenal guy with a million stories, and grateful for his time. This is the Coach Scott Field Show, and we're going to be back next week with another outstanding guest, but those are big shoes to fill with Peter Vecsey today. God bless you, Peter. Thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you soon, brother.
Bring it in. Thank you for watching the Coach Scott Field Show, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. This DBNA television broadcast is a Roar Media production. Don't forget to subscribe to the Coach's YouTube channel. Like and follow him on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have yourself dressed and ready to go in the locker room for the next exciting show coming soon. Thank you for watching the Coach Scott Field Show, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. This DBNA television broadcast is a Roar Media production.